What's up, everybody? Welcome into Between the Tackles, presented by MyBookie.ag. We're coming to you from Gillette Stadium. I'm Michaela Vernava. To my left, Doug Kide, and to my left, Zach Cox. It is pre-week 3. The Patriots will be heading to Detroit, Michigan, soon to play the Lions in their third preseason game. And here we are with Kenny Chesney, yet another concert going on, our setup going on behind us. I do have French braids this time because if anyone watched.
Hopefully we avoid the Mack trucks rolling.
Yeah, we had trucks. We had a lot of wind. We still have a lot of wind.
Yeah.
But everything else, I think this is going to be a great
I think they're leaving
podcast,
for
show.
Detroit this afternoon because we had to get here at 7 in the morning today.
Yes.
To go into the locker room because they need to speed up their day a little bit. But that meant a very early wake-up call. So it's like kind of the evening for Zach and I right now.
Yeah, it kind of feels like it's like
feel that way
7:30,
too.
8 o'clock at night right now.
I got up at 4:30 because we were actually supposed to be here, but then because of a shortage of staff, I had to be in the studio, but I've still been at this. So yeah. All right,
I woke up at 6 a.m. feeling bad about myself. This one over here, 4:30 a.m.
Yeah, well, because when you have to be up that early, I have to get up extra early to, in case anything goes awry with, like an alarm clock. It's like you got to give yourself like a good pad. Anyway, we should get into the show because there is a lot to talk about. I want to start with the last preseason game against the Houston Texans and talk about some of the standouts, because Bill Belichick was very complimentary the other day, specifically about Coney Ely and Caleb Kidder. Do you think they deserved the praise he was doling out to them?
Yeah, Ely more than Kidder. I mean, no offense to Caleb Kidder, but I didn't see a whole lot there from him. But
I feel like there are probably a lot of people saying who.
Yeah,
right now,
I mean, we're not kidding when we talk about Kidder. I don't know.
It's a real thing.
Yeah,
real person.
He was fine. I mean, like, you need someone to play defensive end, and he's definitely someone.
I'm also someone.
Confirmed. My sources have confirmed that he is
someone.
He didn't do much. I was more impressed by Coney Ely, and if we're talking about defensive ends, I thought Adam Butler, who moved from defensive tackle to defensive end, played better than Kidder in that role. So there were some good things to take away. I was just very surprised when he mentioned Caleb Kidder as a standout because I didn't exactly see it myself.
It was kind of a strange hodgepodge of players that Bill Belichick mentioned, and that's this same answer. This was on his conference call on Sunday, I believe it was, the day after the game. The question was about Coney Ely, who basically played the entire game, and I thought played pretty well, especially compared to what we saw earlier in the summer. But he's like, yeah, Coney Ely played well. We got guys like Caleb Kidder, guys like Austin Carr, guys like James O'Shaughnessy. And I was like, all right. I mean, James O'Shaughnessy was pretty good. It was his first action. Yeah. Austin Carr, I guess, was okay. Not as good as he was when during the first preseason game down here a couple weeks back. Caleb Kidder played.
How about Ely, though? Because he was a guy that is still kind of had a lot to prove coming into this. And what did you see from him in the game in terms of his improvements?
I liked what I saw from him. He didn't really – I guess I wouldn't call him a standout in that you didn't watch the game and say, wow, look at Coney Ely. He's really tearing it up out there. But, I mean, he's a guy that we kind of were a little bit wary about a couple of weeks ago during training camp when he was playing with the second, third team defense. Really wasn't showing much of anything on the practice field. Missed some time for undisclosed kind of strange reasons. But, he looked like a solid, serviceable defensive end during the game against the Texans. And that's absolutely what the Patriots need right now since they are a little bit thin at the position. Yeah, I mean, there was a period of time where it seemed like he could have been on the roster bubble. But at this point, since they have so many injuries at defensive end, I think there's a pretty darn good chance that Coney Ely is on this roster in week 1. Because if he's not, then they're getting down to those Caleb Kidder types. Yeah. And I think that Ely is definitely a more promising player than him. So I thought he did fine. I thought he had a decent game out there, like you said, better than what we were seeing earlier. And he's definitely going to have to step up because they don't have a lot of bodies there at defensive end right now.
So why do you think Bill brought up the guys that he did? Is this just him toying with the media?
I don't know.
Because I was surprised. That's why I wanted to start with it, because I was surprised by it as well.
Bill Belichick's interesting. He goes in and out in his desire to praise players. Sometimes we'll ask him about a player and he'll just completely shut us down, like he did earlier in training camp. Just said, hey, like, we got a lot of good players on this team, and that's pretty much it. And then sometimes he'll go out of his way to just out of the blue say, hey, this guy had a really good game, even if it's a guy that maybe didn't even really have a noticeably good game.
Yeah.
I don't know. He's got some mood swings, I guess, where sometimes he's in a much better mood than others. I will say that when we talk to him on conference calls rather than in person, he does seem to be a little more wordy in his answers. He's a little verbose, I guess that's the word.
That might be a stretch, but I do know what you mean.
He gives, I mean, you'll listen to him.
Yeah.
He'll give answers.
A little bit more long-winded.
Yeah. So I guess he was just in a complimentary mood. He also had some pretty high praise for Cyrus Jones, who had a pretty good game.
All right, we'll get to him. Hold on.
All right, jump in the gun.
I thought O'Shaughnessy was kind of
who I wanted to
point out too,
about.
just because he had the fumble in the game, and usually Bill
hates
Belichick is not a big fan of fumbles. It's kind of a weird fumble because it could have been an incompletion. The ball went out of bounds. They didn't lose the ball, and I thought O'Shaughnessy was catching the ball pretty well out there. But I just found that one also interesting to single out a guy for playing well when he fumbled. So yeah, I mean,
where do you think he stands as far as the roster bubble goes right now?
There are three trains of thought on this one. First of which, and the most popular, is that him and Jacob Hollister are really competing for that number 3 role, and because of O'Shaughnessy's special teams experience, he's probably the favorite. Other train of thought is that the Patriots could just elect to keep 2 tight ends because they don't really need a third tight end. They play with 1 tight end sets a lot. James O'Shaughnessy and Jacob Hollister are both more of flex tight ends, pass catchers than they are blockers. So even if Gronkowski or Dwayne Allen went down, they probably wouldn't be filling the same type of role as the other players. The third train of thought is that they could keep all 4 players if they think highly enough of Jacob Hollister. If they think that Hollister couldn't get through waivers and they want to keep him for the future, then maybe they could, forfeit another position and keep 4 tight ends there. I'm probably on the first train of thought where they keep 3. They either keep Hollister or O'Shaughnessy around. O'Shaughnessy probably does make more sense because then Hollister and O'Shaughnessy still does have value on special teams, whereas Hollister, you're not really sure what he can do on special teams. So at least O'Shaughnessy would bring value somewhere else on the team.
So in terms of these last 2 preseason games, what'll be a real test for these 2 guys to be able to prove maybe who deserves a spot on the 53-man?
I think so, yeah. If I had to predict right now, I would predict that James O'Shaughnessy makes the 53-man roster, Jacob Hollister makes the practice squad, unless some other team happens to scoop him up. But that could definitely change between now and then, because we saw in week 1 down here when James O'Shaughnessy didn't play, Jacob Hollister had an excellent game. Last week, James O'Shaughnessy was probably the more prominent player against the Texans. He definitely played more. He made a little bit more of an impact. But we'll see. I mean, they always say the 3rd preseason game is a big kind of measuring stick or a litmus test if we want to go there already. So yeah, we'll see. But yeah, I would give O'Shaughnessy the edge right now if I had to pick.
All right, well, let's get to it. Cyrus Jones, he did have a successful return, and I actually kind of
2 of them
cheered when I was watching the game with my dad, and we were like, whoa, there goes Cyrus.
I think that they were impressive. He's a great athlete. You probably don't want to run sideways east-west as much as he was, but it wound up turning out decently for him. It's a little scary because of the ball security issues that he has when he is running east and west, but I think overall, as a returner, he was good. There was one play on defense I thought was kind of strange where I think it was Deshaun Watson was rolling out of the pocket, and he had very clearly passed the line of scrimmage, and Cyrus Jones was kind of hesitant to tackle him because I think that there wasn't a lot of field awareness there, so he was still covering the receiver where Watson had passed the line of scrimmage. He could have just gone and tackled him, and it wound up being, I think, like an 8-yard carry for Watson.
It was a first down, and even once he did commit to the tackle, Watson kind of bullied his way right through him.
He still kind of plowed through him a little bit. Not a great job of tackling there by Cyrus, not a great job of field awareness, but overall a more positive game than this first preseason game, which was pretty much a disaster defensively for Cyrus.
A step in the right direction. What's your, Zach, analysis of Bill Belichick's analysis of Cyrus Jones in that game?
I mean, he was very complimentary of him. And usually Bill, if he doesn't feel, he's very good at saying nothing rather than saying something negative. If the guy doesn't deserve to be praised, he's very skilled at getting away from a question.
There's some good, there's some bad.
Yeah, one of those kind of deals. And like we've said, Cyrus Jones on defense so far, not great. He obviously had those 2 long touchdowns in the first week. He had that play against Deshaun Watson you just talked about. Also missed a tackle on that long run by Deontay Foreman later in that game. But I mean, if Cyrus Jones is going to make this team, it's going to be because of his skills as a punt returner and especially as a kick returner. If he continues to do what he's doing, I don't see a way that they keep him off of this team. Because I mean, or I guess they could keep him off this team, but they obviously want him to be in this spot, and he's really doing everything they ask of him. He had one little, I guess, minor mental mistake where he caught a punt running backwards toward his own goal line at like the 7-yard line. Don't really want to do that. But overall, there's been none of the glaring mistakes that we saw pretty much all of last season. So I think he's really put himself in a good position to make this team, despite how poorly he's played on the defensive side a lot of times.
I think one kind of interesting player in that mix, too, while we're talking about Cyrus Jones, is just Justin Coleman, because he had a great game on Saturday night there against the Texans. He had 2 pass breakups, let up one 33-yard catch, but he crashed into Demarius Travis on the play, so it was kind of unfair to put it on him. He was the guy in coverage, but there was some interference there that didn't let him cover his man down the field. But Coleman's an interesting guy because I think they would have a hard time getting him through waivers. They've carried him for 2 years now, and I think that if they did release him, I think the Seahawks would probably claim him. So he's maybe a trade candidate if they think the Seahawks would claim him on waivers, because he actually started his career with the Seahawks. They kind of moved him back and forth between those 2 rosters when he was a rookie. If they think the Seahawks will claim him anyway, maybe try to trade him for either a 7th-round conditional pick or some sort of pass rusher or something to just get out ahead of that. But I don't know. Coleman's a decent body, and if they were looking more at that 5th cornerback spot as a guy who could contribute defensively this season, I think that Coleman would be the guy over Cyrus. But Cyrus's value on special teams, the fact that they probably wouldn't want to put someone else back there to catch punts if Cyrus can do it, I still agree with you that Cyrus is probably the favorite during that 5th cornerback spot.
And before we move on from Cyrus too, I just want to touch on his comments yesterday. It was a fiery Cyrus Jones, much more fiery than we've seen in the past. I mean, last year and even earlier this year, he was very quiet, very reserved in his all of his dealings with the media. Really, he said all the right things for the most part, but he was just kind of he was in his shell, as a lot of Patriots rookies are. He was the same way during the early part of his media scrum yesterday, but once he got going a little bit, he was throwing some fire. It was nice. He went on this 1.5, 2-minute rant about fair weather fans. Basically, he was asked, a reporter asked him, "You've been getting a ton of negative attention over the past year plus now. Like, how have you dealt with it? Does that get you down? Does it motivate you? What does it do?" He's just like, "I don't care." He's like, as long as it doesn't come from Bill Belichick or somebody in this locker room or one of my teammates or one of the members of the coaching staff, doesn't matter to me. And obviously everybody says that, but he was really pretty authoritative about the fact that, like, I don't care what you fans say. He called people fair weather fans. He was saying, basically, yeah, if I drop a punt, everybody's gonna hate me, but then if I turn around and run it back for a touchdown the next week, everybody's gonna love me, which is kind of true, but I think it shows you that his mind seems to be in a pretty good spot right now.
Okay, I guess Kenny Chesney's going to do a sound check now. That could be problematic. Wow, I don't even know if should I continue the show at this time? I mean, I was going to say, but I don't know if you can hear me.
That's good. I
guess we can keep just trying to tremendously loud mics.
We're done for now.
Alrighty. Well, keep going and see what happens, I suppose. That I was going to ask, what's going on in that Patriots locker room? There are things going on around. Hey,
1 1 2.
Hey, check. Hey.
1 1 2.
1 1 2. So some Kenny Chesney play calling back there. Something tells me this isn't going to get better. Producer Andres, just keep going, talking into the mics. Okay. All right, we're going to keep going.
Let's do it.
So back to what the heck is going on in the Patriots locker room. Are things just coming off the rails? Because we were talking before we got started here about Dwayne Allen is your new media favorite. Dare we say? We don't want to offend any of the other players, but he's the new guy. He said he's very verbose.
Might be the nicest guy that's ever been in a Patriots locker room.
Nice guy.
And there's some strong candidates.
Check 1 1 2. Mic check. Hi-oh. Now stage center check. 1 1 2. Hey, check.
Hey.
1 1 2. Check.
All right, we're just going to talk very closely into the mics and keep rolling.
1 1 2. Mic check. Now stage center check. 1 1 2.
There's also Mike Gillisley, who said yesterday, I believe it was, that he's 100%, that he had an MRI on his hamstring. I can't hear myself talk.
I can hear you.
Okay.
A lot of information leaking out of that Patriots locker room. This is
Seriously.
I mean, is Bill Belichick
It's
losing his
unusual,
touch
yeah.
and the answers? What?
It's unusual that you get players on the Patriots. They're usually very tight-lipped. They usually don't like to let out any sort of information that they don't absolutely have to. But yeah, hearing Mike Gillislee just openly admit and offer that he had an MRI. You never hear players talk like that. Dwayne Allen today was saying that he doesn't fully know the Patriots playbook yet, or that he isn't sure if he fully knows it. He said it's been extremely hard for him to come from Indianapolis to New England, which is another thing you don't really hear. You don't really hear any kind of professional athletes be that open and honest about their struggles, I guess. And he's also said that he loves his time here. He really feels like he's moving in the right direction, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, it was interesting to hear him say,
especially for him to draw the comparison between how much harder it is here than it was in Indianapolis. And I joke that they're just practicing swinging game drills out there. But
I'm not positive exactly what he was referring to on that, because I think he was referring to the fact that it was just extremely hard to change teams and to learn a new system. Not to say that like what they have here is so much harder than what they had in Indianapolis. He could
he did say the training camp here is very difficult?
I think it was, he meant as in like he had a very difficult time in training camp because he was having to learn all these new things. He could have been both, but that was the sense that I got from it.
It is extremely difficult to hear right now.
Pause this.
Check. 1, 1, 2. Mic check.
Well, anyway, I don't know if when we cut these channels out, hopefully that'll come out. But for anyone that can't hear this right now, they have to know that this is just incredibly loud. It's nearly impossible to hear each other. But can you hear me now? We just kind of keep analyzing. Rob Gronkowski playing for the first time in a preseason game since 2012. Was that his decision to play? You know, he's on the kind of following in Tom Brady's footsteps right now, doing the health kick and playing in preseason games. Do you think that was his call, or is that the Patriots?
Oh no, it's definitely Bill Belichick deciding that, and Gronk has kind of downplayed it a little bit, which is kind of funny because like he hasn't played in a preseason game since 2012, like you said, and he's kind of treating it like nothing. He's saying, "Oh yeah, I'm always prepared to play." When it's like, Rob, you haven't played in a very long time. In 4 seasons, you have not been in a preseason game. But no, I think that it's all up to Bill, and if they decide that he's healthy enough to play, then they decide that he's healthy enough to play, and that's what he did. We'll see if he's out there on the 3rd preseason game, but if he is, then yeah, I guess that they're very happy with his health at this point.
Was that the purpose of playing him? Like, it's like, why now? Is it a health check? Because he was not targeted at all in that game, right?
Right.
I don't believe so.
So what do you guys make of really the purpose, what they were trying to get out of putting him in?
It's a good question. It's a very good question.
Yeah.
I mean, you could say maybe the fact that, so he hasn't played in a preseason game since 2012 and he keeps getting hurt. So that system doesn't really seem to be working that well. So maybe it's a better system to put him out there in the preseason, take a few hits while he can, and then he'll be more ready for the regular season when it actually starts. But I don't know. I mean, it's a very good question. It was very unexpected. No one thought that he was going to play in that game, and he did. So and Bill Belichick didn't want to talk about it. Gronk didn't want to talk about it. So it's just kind of a weird mystery. I mean, I don't know. He is very confident, it seems like, in his health right now. So I don't know. It's a good question. If he stays healthy this year, though, keep doing it. Keep doing what's working, because him not playing the preseason at a certain point wasn't working for him.
Do you think we'll see him this week in this
I
third
don't
game?
know.
At this point, I think so.
It seems like we will, but
yeah.
But last week, this past Saturday, he really only played 2 series. I mean, the whole first offense was on the field for 2 drives, and then they left, and the Jimmy Garoppolo squad kind of came in. In this game, we're expecting the starters to play pretty much the whole first half, if not even longer. I don't know if you want to have Rob Gronkowski out for that entire time. I mean, I would subscribe to the notion that put Rob Gronkowski on ice until week 1. There's no point in putting him out here in a preseason game, especially because he has such the injury history. But apparently Bill Belichick feels differently right now. So I'm going to be very interested to see how they handle him this week.
Well, as far as Tom Brady, what did he have to say about why he is so eager and enthusiastic about playing in these preseason games. You'd think, hey, the guy's 40 years old, has had a successful NFL career. What's the big shake
For
about a
one,
preseason
Tom
game?
Brady's a maniac, and all he wants to do is be on the football field at all times, from what it sounds like.
It's a good
And
description,
also,
maniac.
Yeah.
It's actually
And this-
very accurate.
Very accurate. And especially this season where he has so many new offensive weapons. Yeah, he talked about this a little bit in his news conference this morning. He wants to get in some real actual game reps with Rex Burkhead, with Dwayne Allen, with Brandon Cooks, with guys like this that he's worked with on the practice field now for a month or so. But as he says, and as many NFL players will tell you, practice in game is a completely different animal. There hasn't been a you're basically not allowed to do full contact practice in the NFL anymore. Even when it is technically full contact, there's no tackling. It's very, very different from what you'll see in even a preseason game. So I think it is very beneficial for these guys to get out on the field together, even if it's just for a drive or two, just to get out, target each other a couple times, just kind of work out the kinks, see how it works together. They look pretty good together the other night. So that's really was Tom Brady's mindset, and I think that makes a lot of sense.
So how much of Mike Gillislee do you think we'll see? What will we see him doing now that he's back and self-proclaimed at 100%?
I think that there's a good chance that we see him for at least a full quarter, maybe even a full half out there, because that's kind of the way it's gone so far. We saw Dion Lewis a lot in that first game, saw Rex Burkhead for the first quarter in the second game, and now I think it's Mike Gillislee's time to shine. And, you know, after last week, we were all saying, hey, maybe Rex Burkhead stole that starting job. Now Burkhead's the one who's sitting out of practice, and Gillislee is the one who is practicing. So this is an opportunity for Mike Gillislee to really kind of steal back that first running back role and that early down role in this offense. And then Rex Burkhead would probably take a bit of a step back to be that do everything back, kind of like how Dion Lewis was used at the end of last season, maybe even at the beginning of the 2015 season. So I don't know. We'll see how Gillislee does, because if he doesn't have a good game and then Burkhead gets healthy again, Burkhead could still be the top running back just because of how good he did look on Saturday night. He looked like he was, you know, a starting caliber running back in that game, not only carrying the ball but also through the air, where he showed off really soft hands, good after the catch skills. So I was really impressed with Burkhead. Now we'll see if we're going to be as impressed with Gillislee.
Well, on the other side of the ball, Dante Hightower, and side note, stay tuned later in this podcast. I sat down with Hightower, so we will have that interview for you. But he is, of course, off PUP, which is good news for the Patriots and Patriots fans. And working on a little defensive line. What did he have to say? How do you think we'll see him used and tested in this third game?
I don't even know if he's going to play, actually, because in the locker room, I mean, this doesn't tell you everything, but there's certain players who didn't have bags in front of their lockers. There's certain players whose shoulder pads were still at the top of their lockers, which means that they hadn't been packed up for this Detroit trip yet. Hightower was one of those guys whose shoulder pads were still in his locker and they didn't have a bag in front of his locker. At the same time, Marcus Cannon also had the same situation. And from what I could tell, Marcus Cannon was trying to figure out why that situation was occurring, why he didn't have a bag in front of his locker, and why his shoulder pads weren't packed up. So we'll see if Hightower makes the trip. We'll see if Cannon makes the trip, because Cannon doesn't have any injury that we're aware of whatsoever, and he seemed a little confused.
What's
about
your
this.
take on that situation?
I don't know. It was strange. It was strange.
Yeah.
And it was during a circumstance where there was like 4 of us in the locker room at the time, and Cannon like looked down and was like, he was talking to Nate Solder like, why don't I have a bag? Like,
I can imagine that must be a very jarring feeling for a player.
Yeah, it was at like 7 in the morning, so I think that he was like kind of scrambling to find an equipment guy to ask why this was happening. So we'll see on that. We'll see if we see Marcus Cannon starting out there at right tackle, but we'll also see if we see Hightower, because he has been dealing with that knee injury.
I guess I feel like saying it, I'm like, I kind of am jumping the gun, I guess, seeing
on Hightower?
That he just got back.
Because Alan Branch played last week, and he had been on PUP up until those joint practices with the Texans. So it wouldn't be completely out of the realm of possibility for Hightower to play, but just to play it safe, he's such an important part of that defense, both at linebacker and potentially as a pass rusher, as you were saying. I think the move here is to hold him out until week 1.
Do you think that he will be a successful pass rusher if that's what they go with him, or will we maybe just see him moved around a lot throughout the season?
I think we will see him moved around a lot throughout the season, but I also think he's the best pass rusher on this team. Yeah. And he's played that he's never been a full-time defensive end. But with the way that the Patriots play their defense, it's always kind of a hybrid position anyway. I think he'll be standing up on the side of the line, rushing that way like he did a lot in the Super Bowl, like he's done at times throughout last season and even in previous years. he's pretty much the best at almost every aspect of linebacking on the Patriots. I mean, he's probably their best coverage linebacker. He's probably their best pass rusher. So he can really do it all. And Bill Belichick was talking yesterday about how sometimes you have to move a player out of his best ideal position to another position that he can still play very well and help the team even more in that spot. And I think that's kind of what we're going to see with Dante Hightower, since he has been practicing with the defensive ends, with the defensive linemen, at least in the small portion of practice that we've been able to see. So maybe he'll play this Friday, and we'll be able to see how that defensive alignment looks. But I also wouldn't be surprised if they hold him out, just keep him healthy. I mean, they might as well.
I agree that Hightower has been their most consistent pass rusher over the last really 3 or 4 years since I've been tracking stats on that position. But I will say that he's mostly had the most amount of his success as a blitzer through the middle, and Bill Belichick talked about that a lot yesterday too, how it's kind of a different world rushing the passer as a blitzer up the middle versus off the edge, just because of the different things you're working against. Hightower works against running backs a lot in that role because a running back has to pick him up in that situation. It's a lot different going up against either a right tackle or a left tackle, trying to dip around that edge. But Patriots have used a hybrid front really for a while now. Hightower has been used on the edge. He has found success. And the way that they use their front seven is actually very interesting, especially in their nickel front, because it's not really a 4-man front. It's not really a 3-man front. It's kind of a 5-man front where we'll probably see Trey Flowers at right defensive end. Then we'll see the 2 big defensive tackles next to him. And then next to that player, we'll probably either see a Coney Ely type or maybe a Dietrich Wise type, who are on the bigger side as a defensive end, a guy who's stout enough to play against the run, stout enough to rush up the middle, but also a good enough pass rusher to maybe get after the passer, better than a Malcolm Brown or an Alan Branch type. And Wise and Ely are both those types of players. And then on the end there, you have a linebacker who's standing up, and that's either going to be Dante Hightower, or we've been seeing a lot of it from Harvey Longy, who's kind of been filling in that Dante Hightower role. It could also be someone like Shea McClellan or Kyle Van Noy. All of those guys can kind of do that hybrid linebacker / defensive end role that Rob Ninkovich played for so long in this defense, and Mike Vrabel played for so long in this defense. And that player really has to be able to either drop back into coverage or rush the passer. And all those players that I just mentioned are all guys who could do that. So it really lets you rush 5 men, lets you bring 1 guy back and only rush 4. Trey Flowers could even drop back in coverage at times. It's not ideal, but that right defensive end has to be able to drop back in coverage a little bit there as well. So it's going to be really interesting to see. It's also really tough to track because it's not a 3-4, it's not a 4-3. It's this weird 5-man front where guys are going to be moving all over the place. And to say, like, this guy's going to fill this role, it might be different from play to play, game to game, week to week, month to month. So I don't know. I think Hightower will be all over the place.
I'm curious kind of about the domino effect because Ninkovich retired, the Dark Rivers injury. If, as you mentioned, Hightower has been successful in defending against the run, if he's charged more with setting the edge, what does that mean for a Landon Roberts? Because a Landon Roberts has been successful in defending against the run. So does that bode well for him, give him a little bit more of an opportunity at all? Yeah,
I think it does. I think at this juncture, 53-man roster projection, I'd put David Harris and a Landon Roberts on there, just because if Hightower is working on the edge more and setting the edge at outside linebacker, you probably need to go too deep at inside linebacker, and that would be David Harris and Landon Roberts. Roberts is an interesting player, though, because like you said, he can blow up plays in the running game. He can fire through the line, blow up an offensive lineman or fullback and get a 3-yard loss. At the same time, he can miss a tackle and let up a 60-yard play. We've seen both of those things in the preseason.
I've seen him do that twice in the preseason.
Yeah, and not a great coverage linebacker either, so I think he's a good depth option. I would probably trust David Harris more at this point to be the starter there in the middle, though.
Agreed.
Do you have a side point that I
had a side point and now I forgot. Oh, just the fact that going back to how versatile this Patriots defense can be and how kind of unconventional it is. It also allows them to really switch up their entire defensive alignment without subbing, without putting any players on the field or off the field, because they have all these players who can play outside linebacker / defensive end, or off the line, or middle linebacker. They can really rotate these guys around. And we saw it a little bit early in the game against Houston, how they can come out 2 plays in a row and really show a completely different front without having to bring new players onto the field, which really gives the defense an advantage, because the offense, they can't look at a personnel package and be like, oh, they're coming out in a 3-4 here. Oh, they're coming out in nickel. Oh, they're coming out in whatever. So it really gives gives Matt Patricia and the rest of his staff kind of a little bit of an edge in the game planning.
One thing that I forgot to touch on when we were reviewing Game 2, and I blame Kenny Chesney's sound check because it completely just erased the thought from my brain, was your assessment of the Patriots secondary against those Houston tall wide receivers. How much of a test do you think that was for them, and in terms of the litmus test, did they pass fail?
Butler didn't look great.
No.
And this was also a Texans team that was without its top 3 wide receivers. DeAndre Hopkins didn't play. Will Fuller's hurt. That's a hard name to say. Will Fuller is hurt. And Braxton Miller also didn't play. So it was Bruce Ellington that was really doing most of the work. Bruce Ellington and Jalen Strong.
Yeah.
Both of them beat Malcolm Butler. Malcolm Butler did not have a good game at all, which was a little surprising. Nothing to really take any takeaways away from it. It was just a bad game on his part, I think.
He forgot to jump at one point.
He forgot to jump at one point.
It's a weird thing to forget to do.
Forgot to jump at one point, let up a very, very easy touchdown on the Texans' first touchdown of the day. He just got toasted by Jalen Strong, who's a guy who's a depth option on a mediocre team. So it was not the best showing by a guy that has actually been really, really good throughout. He's been one of the Patriots' best defensive players, if not their best defensive player, pretty much all summer. So it was weird to see.
And that was it Ellington that he got burned on a long ball down the sideline, and I felt like his coverage actually looked good, but it was the height difference.
I think he claimed that he got pushed off, and he might have a little bit, but I mean, it's a play that you should make if you're.
He either lost the ball in the lights and didn't know when to jump, or just didn't jump. It was just very strange. He was standing right in front of the guy, just didn't jump and didn't deflect the ball. So
does the height factor concern you at all there, though? Because they will be facing the Kelvin Benjamins, those tall wideouts this season.
That's the play he struggles on. I'm not that concerned about it, though, because Stephon Gilmore's 6 feet, and he's really going to be the guy who's covering those players. But if they face a team with 2 tall receivers, which I'm not smart enough to think off the top of my head about a team that they're facing
Kelvin
this year
Benjamin was the first one that came to mind. I was trying to
tall receivers, but then they might run into trouble. But you could also just put Eric Rowe in there and have Malcolm Butler cover whoever is the shortest guy out there. But while we're talking about the defensive backs, I thought that Stephon Gilmore did play well. He had a pass breakup. And in talking to Devin McCourty yesterday, he said that he's been working a little bit more in the box, more towards the line of scrimmage, which I think that's really just a depth option for the Patriots. But that does tell you that if Patrick Chung got hurt at some point, God forbid, Devin McCourty would probably move down to the line of scrimmage, and Deron Harmon would be back there at free safety, and that's how they would kind of finagle around that. I think that means that Jordan Richards really isn't guaranteed a roster spot, because Devin McCourty is not only the starting free safety, he's also the backup strong safety.
Despite this somewhat poor showing from Malcolm Butler in the last game, the Patriots secondary pretty strong, which is different from years past. I feel like a lot of times this Patriots secondary is the main area of concern heading into a season. Of course, they're loaded on offense. I guess, just curious, just came to me, what position specifically would you say is the Patriots' weakest or potentially problem area?
Defensive end, I would say it's definitely the biggest question mark at the moment, just because we don't really know what they're going to do with it. If Dante Hightower comes in and is a dominant kind of edge rusher, then that kind of erases that need. But just because it's so shallow, just because so many of the people that are going to be plugged into that position are either rookies or new Patriots or haven't really played full-time in that position, there's just so much uncertainty there. So that's definitely what I would say. Outside of that, maybe interior offensive line, maybe? But it's it's not unsettled, but it's hard to find weak spots on this team, as we were saying all summer. I mean, other than defensive end,
I would say end, just because, so Trey Flowers is your premier player at that position. I'm a huge Trey Flowers fan, but even he did not get a ton of pressures on a per snap basis last season. Got a lot of sacks, and sacks are huge plays. They can really disrupt an offense, an opposing offense, but he wasn't that guy who was getting into the backfield 20% of the time or 15% of the time. I think he only got into the backfield about 9.5% of snaps. So even Chris Long, who, I don't think that anyone thought that he was a superstar last year, he was actually getting in the backfield at a higher rate than Trey Flowers. So there's just a lot of uncertainty there, and they really have to hope that Trey Flowers not only can play as well as he did last year, but also improve upon how he played last year.
One note on that too. I want to see how Trey Flowers performs this year going into games where teams are game planning against him. They know that he's not coming out of nowhere anymore. It's the second half of the last season. Nobody really knew who he was.
This is a very good point.
He was really sort of invisible the first half of the season. He didn't really come along until week 8 or 9, and then by the end, it wasn't until the Super Bowl really that he became a real household name. So I am interested to see how he performs this season when he's a focus of opposing offensive game plans. When they look to try to take him out of the game, can he still be a factor in the game?
Well,
we got a forklift situation here.
Yeah, I'm not even going to turn around. I know that something is going on behind me. Of course, I open up the podcast being like, guys, I think we are going. We got
a forklift full of beer.
All right.
I like it.
All right. So I guess we don't have that much time left. So let's kind of wrap this up. But so late August, you have a piece coming out on this, Zach, that if history is any indication, we could see a trade coming for the Patriots. Do you think that they'll address the pass rush and lack of depth at defensive end? Is that a possibility?
It's definitely a possibility, but I think if they were going to bring in one of these big-name free agents, big-name older free agents like a Dwight Freeney or Mario Williams, Paul Kruger, any of these guys, I think they would have done it already. Yeah. But history does show that they usually do make at least one trade in the time between training camp starts and between the first regular season game. I look back at the last 5 years, they've made a trade in 4 of them. They've made multiple trades in 3 of them. But when you look at the actual trades themselves, they're usually not getting a real impact player. I mean, Eric Rowe is really the only player on that list who you can say had a significant impact on his team that season. Other guys, Michael Williams and Tim Wright, they were bit players, and then apart from that, it was mostly random bottom of the roster guys who ended up getting cut about a week later. So I think you can expect there's a high probability that there will be a trade, but a pretty low probability that it'll be of anybody of real significance.
Yeah, because even with Rowe, that was actually after roster cuts that trade happened. The ones pre-roster cuts are like the Ben Bass, Jalen Saunders types who you've never heard of for a reason.
All right, well, since roster cuts are not until September 2nd, with that only one cut this year, we will dive into that in depth next week on Between the Tackles. But right now, this forklift is waiting. We kind of have to wrap up. Again, I started this podcast out by saying I think it's going to be, I braided my hair to defend against the wind, and I didn't see any trucks, so I thought we were going to be in the clear. Little did I know we were going to get a full-blown sound check in forklifts, but any elements, you got to be ready for anything, do our jobs. But right now, this is actually perfect timing because I did sit down with Dante Hightower. He is hosting his 3rd annual MNF watch party to benefit the American Diabetes Association. That is on September 25th. His mother will be there, of course. We saw her dancing in that awesome video he posted when he signed his contract this off season. So should be a good time. A lot of his teammates will be there, and I got to chat with him about it. So let's hear from Hightower. Michaela Vernava, joined by Patriots linebacker Dante Hightower. We are at Bar Louie in Foxborough, Mass, where you will be having your 3rd annual Monday Night Football watch party. Tell us a little bit about that event and why it's so important to you.
I'll start with why it's important to me. My mom was diagnosed, I think, 3 years ago with diabetes, and we talked a lot about what we could possibly do to try to give back. I mean, maybe not something as big as coming up with a cure for diabetes, but just something to give back. And my mom sat down and she thought about promoting awareness. That's something easy and something that with my ladder that I could be able to do. And we decided on that. And as far as the watch party goes, my marketing agency, the Sports Trust, did a great job as far as putting it together with just a Monday Night Football game. I think it's the Cowboys and the Cardinals playing, and fans can just come out and essentially just sit down and watch the game with me and a couple of my teammates.
And during your NFL career, you have said before how much of an impact your mom has had on your life and your development as a player. What was it like for your family when she was diagnosed with diabetes a few years ago?
It hit me and my sister pretty hard. a lot of the women in our family are diagnosed with diabetes at one point in time. So I have a lot of aunts and cousins that are diabetics now. But you know, it hurt, you know, because I mean that's my mom, and but you know, we just started educating ourselves about it. Me and my sister and my mom. She just kind of we were just with her every step of the way.
What kind of challenges does she face that are maybe a struggle for her, for your family, and to help really spread some awareness as to why this disease is a challenge and is important for people to come out and support?
I mean, the biggest part about it is if you don't you know, take care of what you got to do and get your right medication and see your doctor and stuff, at the end of the day you can lose limbs and, you know, essentially your life. And you know, that was one thing that my mom, you know, definitely didn't want to do was to lose any limbs or let something like that she could possibly control, you know, just not do anything about it. So she's been doing great about it. You know, at first, as far as being outside, she likes to be outside in the garden and do things like that with my dog Apollo back home. But I mean, it essentially just changed, you know, a lot of what she was and what she did. But you know, 3 years going strong now. She's doing a lot better. She's able to do all the things that she couldn't do at one point. So you know, we just strive with each and every day.
You'll have a lot of your teammates here supporting you and helping out with the event that night. Given how close to home it hits for you, how much does it mean to see that your teammates come out and are by your side here helping out? It
means a lot. I mean, that's usually, you know, one of our only off days in the week, and you know, for my teammates to come out and support me and, you know how big this cause means to me and how much it hits home, it means a lot to me. And you know, that's one thing that, you know, that Bill and Mr. Kraft really proceed on is, you know, giving back to the community and you know, doing what you can for your teammates. And you know, just like I have an event, you know, Julian will have an event, Danny Amendola will have an event, and you know, a lot of guys will show up and try to support that. So you know, that's one big thing that we pride ourselves on in that locker room is, you know, being accountable and being there for one another.
So your event is on September 25th, so little ways away, but what can we expect that night? I know, again, that a lot of the guys from your team will be there. What's the night like for anyone who hasn't been there before?
It's fun. You know, we usually have a lot of raffles. You know, I have a couple guys sign a couple gloves or a pair of cleats or something like that. We raffle those off. We usually have a couple of games, a couple signature cocktails for those able to drink. It's just a really relaxing time. I mean, it's just like watching Monday Night Football at home, but you know, you're surrounded by a lot of Patriot fans and a lot of Patriot players. So it's a very enjoyable night.
Will your mother, LaTanya, be there that night?
She's gonna be here. She made it last year. She wasn't able to make the first year, but I don't think she's gonna miss another one as long as I'm up here. So you can count on her being there.
So if you're buying a ticket, people might be able to meet Mama Hightower
she's
in
gonna
person.
She's gonna be in there. She's gonna be jigging and dancing and everything. So we're gonna have a good time.
Something tells me she's probably going to be the life of the party because of that post you put on social media of her dancing when you re-signed in New England.
That was just a little taste, man. I cut up a little bit. I can't cut up like my mama doing. You know, when the camera's on, I tone it down a little bit, but we're gonna have a good time.
So there are more moves than what we saw in that video?
I ain't gonna put a limit on it, but man, Mama better get down now. She gets down.
Can you dance like that?
Not like that. She got me on that. I don't know if I got those passed on to me, man, but she gets down now.
What has she passed on to you? Just getting back to how much she's been able to support you and bring you to where you are in your career.
Just a little bit of everything, you know, knowing that, you know, you can't make everybody happy, and you know, I mean, you're gonna get knocked down, but you got to get back up. I mean, the world is not a easy thing, and you know, she taught me at a young age, being a single parent and raising me and my sister. So I had a great role model. So you know, everything that she did, I was trying to do. So you know, I love her for it, and she's the reason why I'm the man I am today.
Are there any specific moments or memories you have where she really was able to help pick you back up when you did fall?
I think maybe the first time was, well, the biggest, I think to me was probably my knee injury in college in Alabama. You know, knowing felt like I was excelling at a decent rate or whatever, and then just getting stopped like that. But she was with me every step of the way. She was there before surgery, after surgery, rehab, and all that stuff like that. And, you know, she just told me that, you know, everything happens for a reason. You know, God controls all of that, and I took it as what it was and kept going in stride.
All right, well, this event sounds like it's going to be a great time. We will be there. If people want to buy tickets, where can they do that? American Diabetes Association website? Is that
You know,
right?
I actually think that the link is actually on my Instagram.
Perfect. Link in bio.
Link in, it's
Make
in the
it
bio.
easy.
I hope it is anyway. If not, I'll have to get that. Address.
All right, well, it should be a fun night. Does benefit the American Diabetes Association, both research and awareness, and a lot of your teammates will be in attendance. Looking forward to it, and thanks for talking with us, Dante.
No problem. Thank you.